So, welcome to the BA Knowledge Share. In this episode, we have a very special guest, Paolo Sammicheli. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So, welcome to this show.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much for inviting me.
Great. So Paolo, you're an Italian entrepreneur. You're also an international speaker and author of several books, one of them being Scrum for Hardware, the first significant publication in the world on the topic, and Scrum and AI, Artificial Intelligence, Agile Development with Scrum and MLOps, with the foreword by Sutherland. So I'm a big fan of Jeff Sutherland, so this is that's awesome. You've also You've helped organizations uncover better ways to work with customers, and you're also a Scrum trainer for Scrum Inc., Lean-Agile Procurement Trainer and Management 3.0 Facilitator. You're also an you've executive certificate in management and leadership from MIT Sloan School of Business. So that's awesome. You have a lot going on there. First off, the first question that I have is, what is your perspective on the future of Agile with new complex challenges like developing AI?
So, my perspective and my recent experience coaching these teams developing AI-based applications is that when the challenges become more complex, so complex, like AI or like in hardware, from my previous book, what you see is that you can't just do the basic stuff, So the Scrum guide alone doesn't provide you all the necessary ingredients to reach your goals. So what I see is that the Scrum of high-performing teams in AI, they use more patterns from the Scrum patterns library than the basics, and also that the engineering practices needs to be really serious. And so what you see is that Scrum alone can provide you everything you need. So you need also continuous integration, you need DevOps, you need MLOps in particular for talking about machine learning, and you need automated testing. So the idea is that the more complex the challenge is, the more serious needs to be your practices, and so that's what I'm seeing. So I think that if the trend keeps going, what we will see is the fusion between things that we might consider separate, like extreme programming and Scrum and MLOps. We will see that all the teams will converge on the larger set of practices.
So Scrum is not going anywhere. Agile is not going
I don't
anywhere.
think so.
It sounds like it's definitely needed in AI projects. So that's interesting, right? So there's a lot of unknowns out there. And that ties to my next question is, how does Scrum look differently in AI related projects? Is there any difference? You did mention that for AI projects, it's using a lot more Scrum. So can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah. So basically, if we look at the book from 2019 from Jeff Sutherland and Jim Coplien, the Scrum book, where they shared the huge library of patterns. So for people who are listening to us, a pattern is a elegant and general solution for a recurring problem. So we have patterns everywhere. We have patterns in architecture. We have patterns in software. From the 90s, they can go forward and the following patterns. And we do also have patterns in organizational design and in Scrum as well. So what I'm seeing is that for example, the patterns for in Scrum for the Scrum guide, for example, deal only with the planned work. So what you do, you plan at the sprint planning and you review at the sprint review at the end of the sprint. But if you have something in your work that it cannot be planned, unplannable work, what we have in the pattern library is called the interruption buffer. And so that with the interruption pattern, we have a fraction of the work that is plannable and a fraction of the work that is not plannable. And so we do have a Scrum that can deal with things that are diverse from the standard setting when you have like a team starting to developing a software or a project of from any domain from a greenfield. And so they don't have an interruption. If you have teams that they have already something in production, for example, they get bugs, they get urgent need for support. You cannot plan those, but you need to have a process that works either with plannable and unplannable work. And so, for example, this is something I see around very, very emerging more often every day. Other things that we used to consider very important with traditional software, like story points. I see less AI teams doing estimation at all. The idea is that, do we have enough work for the entire sprint? And the answer is just yes. And so they are relaxing some practices that instead maybe in software are more used, and they are adding new practices. This standard structures though is still the same. You have a sprint, you do have planning, review, and retrospectives, you have dailies, and you have product owners, because the question of understanding business is still a really a big pitfall, because if you misunderstand what the business wants, user wants, there is no point in developing at all, right? So that's what I see around interviewing teams in AI.
Yeah, and also to your point around understanding the business need, because business analysts go out there and really try to understand, well, what are your business needs? Let's document your requirements, or let's understand your requirements. So that doesn't seem like that's going away. There's always going to be a need if there's a problem for analysts in that sort of environment or team. You mentioned in your book that in conventional software development projects, you provide machine with input and instructions to get the desired output. But in AI, you give the conditions to allow the computer to figure out the instructions by itself. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So talking about software, of course, AI is very wide. So we have something called supervised learning and something called unsupervised learning. So the simplest example comes from supervised learning. That's we might want to cover so that the people not familiar with AI can understand. So supervised learning means that you have a set of data and you tag this data. So you add an information to this data on what is the desired output. For example, let's say we want to have an algorithm that you provided with a picture of an animal, let's say a dog or a cat, and the algorithm can understand if this is a dog or this is a cat. How we solve this problem? We collect a lot of pictures and we say, okay, this is a dog, this is a cat, this is a dog, this is a cat. Then we provide the machine learning algorithm with all the examples and say, okay, this is a dog, this is a cat. He learns, basically, he tries to guess if this is which animal, and then we say that he propagate when he make a mistake. So, okay, I believed in my current structure this was a dog, instead is a cat. So what I should change by myself in my internal structure to understand that this is not a dog, is a cat. Now you can provide the machine something that we don't know what is it, and it will try to guess with some percentage of accuracy if this is a dog, this is a cat. In the foreword of my book that Jeff Sutherland kindly provided, there is a comparison between Scrum and this kind of approach, because in methodologies, what you have is a very detailed description of what the behavior from developers is supposed to be. So in methodologies, you say, okay, do this, do that, meet here, write these documents, and so on. Scrum itself, when Jeff showed to Mike Biddle, Mike Biddle is the third person of Scrum, because Jeff they started implementing Scrum and then they popularized it. The first person in the world who implemented the Scrum in a company where there wasn't Jeff and Ken is Mike Biddle. And Mike Biddle, when he heard about Scrum, he said, okay, I get it. It's based on artificial intelligence. That was in 1995. Oh. Imagine how genius was the Mike. Unfortunately, Mike passed away a few years ago. And so we miss him very much. And so the idea is that what you do in Scrum, you make the team to plan something, to try to review what they did, and then to reflect on the retrospective. And then they will say, is this what we were expecting to do? No, we missed this, or we broke this stuff, or the clients told this feedback that needs some correction. And so they learn by themselves the process and the way to develop the product. So basically, it's machine learning for humans. So instead of providing all the information, how you should behave to have a very functional development team, you will figure out by yourself, because what Scrum do in practice is, Scrum is just tuning out the feedback loop, so that the members they will figure out by themselves what we are supposed to do, how we are supposed to do it, and so on. So that's really fascinating, because we tend to think that the human beings are the intelligent part, and then we have the machine that we are trying to make a little bit more intelligent. And then we found that the traditional project management approach is more like programming for human beings that treat the people like, let's say, not intelligent beings. With Scrum, you give the network of the developers plus the product owner and let's say even the stakeholders the responsibility to figure out themselves what we should do and how to do it.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating the way you've explained it, right? So it's like it's cyclical. It's literally AI, I mean not AI, but this whole Scrum and Agile process. Do you think AI would ever take the role of a project manager or a Scrum master?
No. So when I attended the business school at the MIT, the Sloan, as you mentioned before, I met one of the best professors in the world. And let me remember the name now. Sure. Is Professor Pietro Bon. I don't want to say the word. The name incorrectly. Let me Google for a second.
But it's interesting while you're looking it up. So AI won't be able to sort of replace those skill sets, because they are so. On one level, you can structure them probably in a certain way, like structure tasks and projects. Another level, there's a lot of finesse, and there's a little bit of art there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Project management.
So why I'm getting the exact name of this project? I don't recall it. It's really embarrassing, but
no, it happens.
Let me say what he told us about AI. He was teaching the economy, so we were talking about something else. But what he said, that the one advantage of a human beings towards a machine, that we will always have an advantage, is that human beings, they can change their mind in a fraction of a second. So you have, for example, a belief, and you say, okay, I believe this thing. Then you have maybe a conversation with me, and you acquire a new piece of information from me, and that made you change your mind. A machine, to change their mind, it takes a huge amount of new data. So one unfair advantage for human beings that we are capable of adapting and change our minds with just one new information. Instead, the machines, if they form a belief, then to change their mind, they have to acquire much more data. So for example, the example of before, cat and dogs, then I show a mouse, they will need thousands of pictures of mouse to understand that this is a mouse, okay, and not a cat. Instead, for us, you never saw a mouse, but if you see one mouse ounce, you're being told that this is a mouse. You never see that because they don't exist here, but they are mouses. You learn instantly. You add a new category. So this is the unfair advantages. Macroeconomics. Let me Google, because the professor needs to. Oh, here you go. So the professor name is Roberto Rigobon. Professor Roberto Rigobon from MIT. There is a lot of videos on YouTube about him. He's explaining multiple stuff. I think is the best communicator, and is very passionate. I loved how he teach, and he told this in class, and I think this is really interesting because nobody in the news or books about sci-fi, for example, for machine taking over, and I never heard this from any other sources, but this is so a Scrum Master. Scrum Master needs to that's a typical example where you need to change your mind instantly. So, for example, you are used to work with somebody, and you like him or her, and you trust her, or let's say trust him, because men are more or less trustworthy. And then you find that this guy is stealing something from your company. You change your mind instantly, right?
Right.
So now this is an extreme example, but that's why project managers, product owners, Scrum Masters, I don't see them to be machines.
And also it's the changing environment, right? So there's so many, and the changes are happening faster and faster. So changes from customers, right? Their behaviors will always make us pivot faster.
Exactly.
So
developers,
that's interesting.
Developing might change. So, but this is a continual trend. So in 70s, to develop a software for computer, you had to speak language that was very close to machine, almost 0 and 1s, very, very complex. Then we had high-level languages, but they were structured, so still quite hard to maintain. Then we got object-oriented language, more abstract. Now, probably you will have somebody telling the machine what to do even in a natural language, like we have seen ChatGPT, right? And so maybe the developers, they will not in the future type entirely the algorithm, but they will use a more sophisticated interface. So maybe you might need less developers in a team, but for all the 3 roles of Scrum, I don't see a machine taking the role. What we are seeing right now, very interesting too, is a human-machine pairing. There is a small chapter in my book. For example, there is an interesting product called Copilot from GitHub. So basically, you write the code, and then you write in a comment something like, I would like to check if this input is correct, or if there is some malicious, for example, or this is let's make a simpler example. I would like to check if this string is a valid date. Okay, so the format is a date. So and this AI pairing with you, write the algorithm, and then you can kind of adapt what you want to change. But so this kind of pairing, humans and robots.
It's almost like a peer collaboration with AI, right?
Yeah,
Where they're doing where you as a developer are typing in, hey, to your point, your example, and then the AI is actually doing that work for you. So it's almost like it's peer review, but it's really pair collaboration. That's
exactly.
interesting. I never heard of that.
Exactly. So
Um,
what we will see is this: we will have superhumans thanks to the AI, but it will not. I don't see at the moment, as far I know, something that you remove the human and use only the AI. That would be a step backward. So because the most sophisticated intelligence today is natural intelligence plus artificial intelligence. Alone, they are limits. So that's a good news
together,
if you are scared
yeah, but
about AI.
yeah, they need you, right? Oh,
Exactly.
they definitely need you. So on a newer effort, so ChatGPT was released. I think a lot of people have used ChatGPT by now. It's interesting. It's just a little snippet into the world of AI. Um, how does one determine how they can leverage AI? So as an example, there's bigger organizations out there trying to figure out and scratch their heads like, how do we leverage? How do we even start an AI project? So this goes back to two questions here. One is, how do you determine the need for AI? And how do you go about actually assessing it or getting the scope for AI projects?
This is a big a big question. So
Okay, sorry.
the
One.
my advice is the most important part is understanding the root of the need or the desire. You know, you can develop most of the time in software we talk about the problems, users' problems, but sometimes they are desires, not just problems. So you want to do more, not just solving a problem, but maybe being able to work more. So the ability to understand really the real source of value. So somebody that wants or needs something and they cannot achieve it by themselves, and you understand this tension. Somebody has a desire that is not easily, cannot be easily being fulfilled. And so the idea is say, okay, if I can provide them something, they will reach this desired benefit, and so we can exchange value with them because for them it's valuable to reach this outcome. So we can ask in exchange something, and it might be money, or it might be your data, or might be okay. That's how normally human transaction works. So the idea is that basically AI, what gives you is a larger tool set. Let's say with traditional software, you can solve a set of problems. With AI, you can solve, you wouldn't be, I think, optimal to going and solving the same problem that you solve with traditional software. The best part that we are seeing around at the moment is that you solve a new category of problems with AI. So, for example, if you have to write an algorithm to recognize cat and dogs from pictures, and you write it in a traditional way, that would be almost impossible. You should compare every single pixel in colors and figure out that you want to look for eyes. That's not something. It's not something that you can even think how to do it. But with machine learning, you can do that. So the idea is that if you are interested in a business analyst, it will be more. I mean, in traditional software, business analysts understand the problem and then also understand the part of the solution. Here would be, we need to figure out the problem. And then when we need to figure out the problem, we can have understanding if this problem category fits well in algorithm that a human being can write, or an algorithm that a machine can derive from the data. There will be a new need related to data, because today what we have is the data scientist. Data scientists are expert in data. The problem is that, let's say we have a data scientist expert in natural language processing, so the machine understanding the human language. Of course, if we are talking about general knowledge, any data scientist can understand the language. What if the language is a very narrow domain language, like a medical sector? Now you will need a data, something you might call it a data analyst, but let's say an expert on that domain, pairing up with the data scientist, pairing up with the developers, pairing up with the business people understanding how to make value with this solution together to figure out what to do. So there is probably we will see in the future development team with a more wide set of skills. So in Scrum, we have this idea of cross-functional team. So in the same team, you have developers, testers, analysts, and so on. You will have probably, I don't know, somebody that is a medical degree in a development team, because they have to understand the medical jargon and all the implication that if you change just a letter in medical terms might change everything, right? So what I think the future will be, developing this stuff is going to be even more a team sport rather than an individual sport.
That's a good analogy, because I never thought about the domain expertise that will reside within the team itself. Your point about medical expertise is a good example, and other examples could be finance or insurance or other domains. Absolutely. It's been such a great conversation to have and with you, and really understanding about AI and how that sort of comes into play with the agile world, with analysis. If someone wanted to learn more about you and about your books, do you have any recommendations that folks can go to?
Well, there is the website scrum-ai.com, where of course, you see the links to buy the book on Amazon if you want a paper version. And I have a copy here, so this is now on Amazon. What I say in this book is that this is not the book. What you're holding in your hand is not book. Is like the lifetime access to the online version. So in the last page, there is the QR code to download the electronic version that will get updates while I gather new material. So the idea is the book itself is agile, so it's never finished. I will add material along the way. On the electronic version only, of course, I don't like the idea of having like multiple editions, because maybe people buy it today and then in 1 year there will be a second edition and you have to rebuy it again. And that I don't think is fair. So what I come up with the idea is that, okay, the paper version will be something to start with. And also if you like to read on paper, you can read that. But then you will have the additional material without paying an extra. So the website contains already some articles that people can read and understanding a little bit, and that would be one option. Of course, if you Google AI articles and videos today are full. I think that some people like Andrew Ng are very interesting to pay attention to. Many university professors are publishing a lot. Almost everything about AI is open source, so there is a lot of interesting stuff. Of course, if you are not a computer science expert, you are starting from scratch, probably YouTube might be a place where to find some tutorial and some simple examples. And then, yes, there are many books suggested in my book as a reference, but now I can't remember all of them.
Yeah, no. So I think your book is one source or one place to really understand AI in Scrum, and I think it's a good read for those, especially in this community of business analysis that are within that Agile or Scrum environment. To really read, I mean, it is a good read to get familiar with AI. So thank you so much for joining us today, Paolo. If folks wanted to get a hold of you, you have provided that website. link as well, and we'll provide some links in the show notes below as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Paolo, and
Thank you.
have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Bye.
Bye.